Invisible words. My words pile like an accident behind a dot, too small to contain them, drift into another sentence, rushing towards the cliff edge of the page. Increasingly, the sight of them makes me uncomfortable, like looking at separated flesh. So many of them not joining together the way I would like them to, the way that would make sense. Hold water. The barrier of unbroken skin and a perfect sentence. Beautiful to behold. Not writing is impossible. My grasp on the world slides disturbingly away from me, scale distorted. So now I look for ways to make my words invisible, there, but not. White on white. My finger sliding on misted glass. A feather tracing a sentence on my skin. My toe dragging through sand, water words drying to nothing on concrete. Writing to disappear. In my head, the soundtrack comes from the innermost parts of a shell, the ghosts of water always moving. The Last Supper. Lisa.
Everyone has their skeletons. They don't make me special. Neither does running, which is what I did. I tell myself I had no choice. My inevitable future stabbing me in the chest. Me at age 30, 4 kids, fewer teeth, a badly set nose, an overweight man scratching himself in front of a TV. Too much perfume and still the smell of cigarettes permeates everything. That was the alternative. I've never managed the word love, but beside me is Dave, the next best thing. I watch him bite his tongue to keep his questions in. And it would have been fine, but my mother called. They spoke. They have organized a supper, here, 6 days and counting. A note on my mother. 16 years was too long to spend around her. Fun turns to torture. Rituals that even now I cannot escape. Like a machine, I have been programmed. My childhood is filled with lists, from the mundane to the life-changing. Her cramped handwriting forcing one to acknowledge the effort each word cost her. On till slips, walls, the backs of envelopes, no surfaces went untouched. It was through various lists that I found out my parents were getting divorced, that my cat had been run over, that my cousin was actually my sister. I was 12 when I researched the drugs my mother had in the bathroom. It didn't take me long to figure out that she was bipolar, is bipolar. I haven't seen her for 5 years. Missing her is the safer option. I see my father from time to time. We exchange Christmas cards that politely wish each other well. He's not a bad man. He loved my mom, but I think in the end was just not prepared for what life with her meant. I have a memory of a photograph. In it, they are looking at each other the way people do in movies, love thrumming between them, a holy relic for my younger self, for their younger selves. I met Dave through work. He has a removal company and wanted to get a net presence. It sounded like he had been rehearsing the words. So I designed something that he sort of liked. Then I designed something else which he didn't like. Then he owned up that he had liked the first one but wanted to see me again and would I like to go out for coffee. I said yes, because I liked the way his ears secreted themselves away behind his hair. He isn't the first boyfriend I've had, but he is the first I've stayed with this long. It's been almost a year now, and he has a toothbrush at my house. I don't have one at his, but that's only because having 2 toothbrushes seems extravagant. I haven't given him a key, but he has mumbled about having one made for me for his house, so I may have to consider it. While Dave has managed not to ask questions, the manner in which I have left things unsaid has, I know, led him to believe that I have a normal family. I've learned that if you don't actually tell people details, they make them up themselves using their own lives as a template. He's going to think I have lied to him when he finds this stuff out.
Hello. My name is Mervyn. This is Frankie. And
Frankie the Nervous.
this book in front of me, I'm not going to talk very much about it. It's called Everyone Dies, a series. I've been using the word exquisite a lot when I've been talking about it to people. It doesn't feel like the right word, but it captures the emotion for me, the response that I had when I first read. It's a beautiful piece of writing, beautiful pieces of writing. It's complex, it's stunning, and I know that everybody in this room is going to absolutely love it. And I am in awe of the writer of this book, but in order to make her more uncomfortable than she already is, I want to start. I've got a few questions for Frankie, obviously. I'm going to start with a little bit of a disclaimer, which Frankie hasn't asked me to make, but I thought it was probably appropriate. In the conversations, the sort of programming conversations that we had leading up to the festival, looking at all the books, et cetera, Frankie was deeply uncomfortable about putting herself on stage on the program. And essentially what happened was that Belinda and I then just took a decision to kind of exclude her from that conversation, which was the right thing. And we both felt very, very strongly that given everything that Frankie has given and contributed to this festival over the last however many years we've been doing this crazy thing for, this book needed to see the light of day at open book. So we overruled her, and that is why this event is called Compelled to Speak. So thank you, Frankie, for allowing us to compel you to speak, not that you actually had any choice in the matter.
I was about to ask, where was that choice?
Yeah, there wasn't. It's called Everyone Dies, a series, and I'll touch a little bit on the Everyone Dies part. Bit of a spoiler. Why a series?
I mean, my first answer to almost any question is I don't know. But if I put a little bit more thought into it...
Then you dig deep.
Yeah, then I dig deep, try and find the brain. I think that it's mostly to do with the sense of incompleteness that a lot of my writing kind of has for me. So if it's a collection, it feels that each of the stories has been crafted and it's finished. And yes, a lot of these, they are finished because of all of the death. But they also feel like I could, they're too open-ended in my own kind of way of thinking of them. And so it feels like series is a truer representation of the writing for me. Whether that's something that feels right for the reader as well, I don't know, and I'm not sure that I really care. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's make this all about not giving a shit about your readers. Great marketing, yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't mean to actually publish.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay. Okay. The other thing is that they are now they're in here. This thing is finished, so they are complete. You have complete. No choice. They are no longer yours.
Well, I did find some notes that I'd written to myself in a secret place, being my phone, which I had meant to include in this, but the book was already then a thing. And I was like, well, maybe I can just add them on by hand at the end.
As your informal agent, it's been a difficult process. It hasn't, it's been a delight. Okay, so the series, the Everyone Dies a series, that's got nothing to do with Netflix and a pitch or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. I mean, they are kind of also connected, so it's not like the same characters appear or anything like that, but it does feel like there's the themes that kind of slide from one piece into another. And so it does feel like they're more connected than just a collection of bits.
Absolutely. Over what sort of period, when were these written? And then also, can you actually share a little bit about the sort of the process and how it came to be published and how we have this amazing book?
They were written over a long period of time, actually, but also kind of rewritten quite recently. So in some cases, I had I've got bits that have managed to survive the various purges that I do of my writing in a kind of compulsive way. So anything that survives has had to work hard. And in many cases has actually been sent back to me because someone else has a copy and I'm like, actually, I would like to see that again. And then often I'll destroy it more than once. So I have depositories with people because of this habit that I have of destroying the things. There's one bit in particular, one piece in particular, the one that I read from. That goes back, probably 12 years, maybe longer. And it used to be about 160 pages. And what's in the book is, I don't know whether it makes 20. So when I say that I've rewritten something, there's a lot of, it's a very different animal to what I originally created. And then some stuff was actually, the original version of it was only, in the course of last year. So it's quite a range of things. And I think that what a lot of the starting points of the pieces are is that in each of them, I was trying to write a novel. So, I mean, I'm a big failure here. I had ideas and I had them in my mind of how they were going to work, and I was very excited to get started on them. And then however long into the process, I would have killed all of my characters. And so there's some very, very short pieces, and then there are others that have managed to get to 15 pages or something. But I'm quite swift with the death thing. That's it.
Second part of the question, process to publication.
So I've always written, compulsively, but I've never really considered publication. And partly that, I think, is to do with the fact that since I was really, really small, I've been a big reader. And I've always thought, if there's ever anything that I've got that feels like it's not already out there better, then I'll consider publication. But I am quite a brutal reader of my own work. You might have picked that up. And I've never gotten to a point where I think, yes, this is original enough. And then I think last year, Karina said to me, whatever happened to that one piece of your writing that I read? And I was like, well, nothing, of course.
For those who don't know, Karina is Karina Sturek, publisher of Caravan, Frankie's publisher.
Most awesome woman. Anyway, yeah, so she said, whatever happened to that? And I was like, well, nothing. And then she was like, you should publish it. And then I kind of remembered that, and I thought, well, should I? And I had a moment where, the more optimistic and, I guess, better equipped in the real world version of myself was like, yes, of course you can do that. So I sent Karina the manuscript, and then I didn't hear from her for a little while.
Talking a couple of hours?
No, it was probably maybe 2 weeks, it wasn't a long time, it was a short time. And also I'm probably misremembering this, so Karina can probably correct me. But I do remember being kind of at the bottom of the stairs at the book lounge, and Karina said, I've been meaning to talk to you about your novel. And I was in my mind thinking, she's trying to now let me down gently and say, I'm sorry, it's not right for me, but well done, pat, pat, that kind of thing. And she's like, I'd love to publish it. So obviously I ran away, took off up the stairs like a rabbit, and I don't think that we even connected again that day. I think I then had to email her and apologize for being such a freak, and that, yes, of course we could have a conversation about publishing. So then we met up at Stark Airs, which is a good spot for someone like me because I feel like I can hide behind plants and, it's outside. I don't have any of the issues, well, fewer of the issues. And there was a contract, And then I found I'd signed a contract. And I was like, oh. And then I immediately consulted Nikki, who is the go-to with all things. And I was like, how do I get out of signing a contract? I don't know, Karina, whether Karina's aware of that part of the process for me. Anyway, Nikki said, no, unfortunately, I can't get out of the contract. And I was still thinking, but Karina's really nice. I'm sure that she would let me out of the contract. So then I spoke to Mervyn as well, and he was like, no, you should let it happen. So, people around me were constantly kind of supporting me in this process. And I think that if anything has come out of this process for me is a recognition of the people that I've got around me. The extreme faith that they've got in me when I don't have it in myself. The fact that they've held me when I've needed to be held in the different ways that I need holding. I wish that I was the kind of person who could just post on social media about, oh, this is an amazing thing, I'm so excited. But I'm unfortunately the person that deletes everything. And so Belinda has stepped into that gap, and she has done anything you've seen on social media recently. Those are not my words. That is Belinda trying to sound very much like me, and I think doing an excellent job. Anything that's happened on the kind of, this is the agent side, that is Mervyn. I have been dragging my feet. I have been the one not having my photo taken. The one, yeah. I mean, if there's been a way to avoid this thing, I've taken it. And
she's overstating it a bit.
Yeah, but
she's a bit of a diva, but not that bad.
I do know that when Karina arrived at the book lounge with copies of the book, she was trying to put this bundle of beautiful books, because the cover is exquisite. She was trying to put this beautiful collection into my hands, and I was unable to take them from her. And when she did eventually manage to kind of put them there, I put them on the ground and went and hid in a corner, because of course. But yeah, I mean, it's been a really, really interesting journey. I've found out things about myself I didn't realize.
I mean, to be fair, in terms of when Karina arrived at the books, I mean, I think a little bit of context there is also important. That 3 days before that, Karina arrived with one copy of the book and went kind of, and Frankie sort of took it from her, and then Karina was like, no, you have to give it back to me as the printer's proof. You can't have this. So I think maybe there was a little bit of that going on. Anyway. And just one last question about the sort of process. You sort of jumped a little bit from, I've written a lot over the years, I've reworked, I've cut, I've slashed, I've whatever, to saying I sent Karina this manuscript. Just I'm assuming then that there was quite a what may have been a difficult or not process of selection for you in terms of what you actually sent her.
There was, I mean, obviously there's a lot more stuff, but there was always stuff that fitted together because of the theme, everyone dies. I mean, I could equally publish a very short collection called A Collection of Smiles, because I've got that, or I could, have a collection of my various collections. But it wasn't right for this.
Okay.
So yeah, it wasn't that difficult of a process.
Okay, I'm interested in the collection of smiles. Same time, same place next year. Your stories are they're structurally unusual, I think. There's a sense of innovation through the collection. So there's, as you say, there are common themes. There are stories that speak to each other. There's a kind of interconnectedness, kind of a sense of being locked in together, and also all sorts of separations. And one of the separations and distinctions is around structure. I mean, you have it opens with a story which is a few paragraphs long. There's a story which is, I don't know, a lot longer, 30-odd pages with numbered paragraphs. We've got a story divided into two perspectives, Lisa and then Dave. we've got a few poems interrupting the text, a couple of drawings. Is that sort of structural innovation, or at least variety, is that something you set out to achieve in your writing? Or is it a case of the different stories lend themselves to a different way of telling?
I think it depends on how the story comes into my head. Okay, I guess there are two parts. So the one part is how I feel information needs to be accessed and how important that is to me. That, to me, if I think about what being able to read has given me, it's everything. It's like my entire world has been so much about books and about reading. And I've always, like, I think particularly when I got to university and I really encountered academic language and the experience of having to fight to understand something for no reason. Like, there's no reason for those ideas that are so important and so vibrant and so part of everything. Why do you have to fight to understand it? And it really pissed me off. So then I noticed my own writing changing as I tried to make it more of a priority that if there was a reader to these words, that it would not be a reader that had to fight to try and understand what I meant. Of course, a reader brings their own understanding, so I'm not trying to compel any kind of this is how you must understand it. But I don't like the idea of someone having to plow through it, even though, I mean, I myself have plowed through many texts and enjoyed it enormously. You know, like unpicking things is lovely. But I didn't want that kind of writing for myself. But then also just in terms of how an idea arrives, you know, sometimes I'll be walking and it'll be like a word is playing in my head, and then it gathers some more words as they do, and then you've got a sentence and you're like, the sentence develops into a thing, and that can be a very, it feels more musical, and so that shifts how I write it. Or sometimes it'll be a thing that instead of a word arriving, I'll have pictures. And I'm thinking about the pictures and I'm trying to write the pictures down. And that changes how I'm writing something. Sometimes it's a thing of, I mean, I do love a good list. I really do.
This festival runs on lists.
I love letters. I mean, I've got a lot of, not necessarily in this collection, but I've got a lot of letters to unknown people about stuff. I love writing letters. I really do.
You're going to publish a collection of letters one day?
Possibly.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to sort of jump around a little bit because you've taken us to something that I wanted to talk about a little bit later. One of the themes of this book for me is about the simultaneous importance and elusiveness of words, of language. Okay. I just want to, just quickly grab a quote here. If I've got the right page, have I? Yes, I do. I had questions, I mean, who wouldn't, but finding the words for them was proving difficult. So I can't help but notice the years have been kind to you. So is it surgery? So where have you been all my life? I eventually settled on silence. A little bit further on, somewhere along the way, I fell asleep, words tripping slowly off my tongue until they finally stalled altogether. There's a lot of this kind of, in some cases, playfulness, but a kind of exploration of the way in which both the importance of words and their elusiveness, as I said just now, and many of your characters almost have a kind of complex relationship with words. They can't find the words they're searching for, and it's a form of silence, which we're very, very familiar with. We're familiar with silencing as a form of oppression. Silence as a sort of symptom of trauma, which in some cases it is. But it's also something different here. It's words. There's a sort of words traveling in and out of reach. There's a grasping for stuff. And I just wondered. And when you started, I mean, you were talking a minute ago about how words appear to you in the wind or something, which sounded amazing. Whether that was something that you sort of set out to write about words and language, or whether that was something that just emerged.
I think it's more something that emerged. But I mean, for me, like silence and language are obviously, they're so closely connected. I feel like they're kind of part of the same thing. I also do think that a lot of the time we're kind of failed by language because we think we're supposed to have the words for something. And I think that in those moments, possibly the silence is actually what we should be actively practicing sometimes. I'm obviously not talking about moments where someone has been silenced or that, you know, there's a lack of words to describe a particular condition. You know, then it's like we have absolutely kind of been failed by language, I think. But I think that there are also those moments where it's hard to stay still, particularly if you're not fully sure of what it is you're thinking. And there's a lot of pressure that we face to constantly explain or be able to describe well, coherently, on the, like, at that moment. That we're not given the time to reflect. Like, what is it that I actually think? Have I changed what I think? Do I need to take more information on board? To the point where I think it's almost seen as a luxury that you're taking the time to consider something, or that there's something wrong with you, or that's certainly how I feel. Like if someone asks me a question and I'm not able to give an immediate answer, I feel like I'm being stupid, you know. But the thing is, I know I'm not stupid. I need time. I need to sit with it, and then I'll be able to give an answer. So I think that's part of the language and silence thing. I don't know if that answers the question you're asking.
I mean, what I love about that also, I mean, is the shifting of, or the getting rid of blame in the sense that, you know, we're so familiar with the I can't find the words. Where language fails me is describing the same thing, but it's so much more empathetic and blame-free, and I really love that construction. When we opened up with a reading, and you read the first part from The Last Supper, which is the second story in the book, and you referenced that just now, and you said that something which I had no idea about, that had a previous incarnation of being 100 and something pages, whatever it was. In this much shorter version, it's broken up into two parts. The first narrative being Lisa and the second narrative being Dave, where they are reflecting on the same set of incidents, the same narrative from two different perspectives. Was that this lengthier version, the original version, was it always split like that into two?
No, there were more voices. So the mother had a voice, and then Dave's mother also had a voice. So there were four voices in total. So
this is really interesting to me because I've read the book. Those of you who haven't might be kind of falling asleep, but we'll get back to you in a second.
Yeah, but the primary voices were still Lisa and Dave.
Okay. And why so much slashing?
It felt like extra weight. I didn't think that it served the story. I felt like it got in the way. I felt like by the end of my slash and burn, it was a stronger piece.
Okay.
I mean, I am brutal with this kind of thing.
Yeah. It is something that we also discuss a lot in terms of reading, around feeling we both can be quite critical readers, I think. but how there are so many books we both respond to in the same way, where we feel like, yeah, this is, this is superb or whatever, but actually could have been cut a little bit, and
Yeah, completely.
the
Like
less is
exposing something, like a gem, a crystal or something. It's like, yeah.
There's a lot of trauma in this book, different kinds of trauma. That shouldn't come as a surprise, given the title is Everyone Dies. If I remember correctly, the table, one of the stories, it kind of contains, I think, the most explicit reference to actual violence, physical abuse, more than any of the other pieces. But even there, it's kind of it's alluded to. It's clear, but it's not described in kind of minute detail. You don't force your reader to live through the violence. You've done a lot of work outside of Open Book, helping other writers to write through trauma and gender-based violence, amongst other things. And I was just wondering the extent to which that work has impacted in your ways about writing about trauma at all.
That's an interesting question, actually.
Thank you.
A lot of the Now I feel like I haven't said that enough. Thank you for the questions, Mo.
Oh, shut up.
No, I mean,
derailing you.
a lot of the stuff, like I said, the stories come from a while back, which predates a fair amount of the work that I have been doing outside of Open Book. I think that when I'm working with someone, no matter what kind of writing they're doing, what I'm trying to assist with, what I'm trying to support them with, is discovering their own voices, while trying to hold space that can be, like, it can be quite traumatizing writing, and anyone who's done that kind of writing knows just the act of writing can be re-traumatizing to self. So you've got to be really careful with that kind of thing. And so my focus in that space is so much on trying to create a safe net so that a voice can be brought into the room, so that it can grow, and so that the person falls in love with how their own voice sounds. So it's tricky to say, okay, that's influenced my stuff because it's my writing, it's my voice. So not so much. I guess just in terms of the content, we live in South Africa. I don't know how anyone is able to write without every page being full of traumatic content. It's like it's everywhere.
As working with helping other writers in that way, has that in any way made you kinder to yourself in terms of your writing? Okay, that on the other hand wasn't a good question. She said she was from the future.
Yes.
Despite the title, first-person male narrative.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened. I playing that was a time travel piece. Obviously, that it was going to be a really, really exciting spec fic novel.
Of 372 pages.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I had a soundtrack in mind for that one as well. Like, it was very musical, not an actual musical, but like, yes.
Space opera? No?
Kind of like that, yeah.
Oh,
I know
Thank
that
you
it
for
wouldn't
not.
be your cup of tea, but I was very excited. But like I say, my characters have no stamina.
You have a very kind of disassociated way of speaking about your characters and your writing. You take ownership.
I mean, I know that I wrote the things.
Okay, excellent.
So yeah, they are mine, I guess.
Okay. The title "Everyone Dies." It was interesting when I first read this, and it's a version that is very has not changed much since then. I think there was one small piece that was added to it. I remember I finished reading it, and then afterwards I thought about the title, and I was like, that's strange. There's not actually that much death in here. And then when I reread it, I was like, okay, pretty much everybody dies. But I mean, apart from the fact that it, illustrates that I'm not a particularly attentive reader, this book is, despite the title, this book is not about death. The pieces are not about death. They're about different struggles of living, different ways of living. And yes, they do, but I mean, everybody does die, so the end point is the same for everybody. There's a couple of different questions here. I'm not quite sure which way to go. So maybe just to talk a little bit about the title and why you decided on that.
I think that's like, you're correct. It's not necessarily that there's blood on the floor. I mean, okay, this is not an answer to your question, but when we were looking at covers,
Speak about anything.
when we were looking at covers, Karina's cover artist had supplied like some amazing options, and my brother, who is in Canada, he sent through some options as well, but he hadn't read any of the books because I am wonderfully secretive. He has read now, I think. But he sent through these covers that had like blood, and it was like they were very gruesome, perfectly suited to the title. But I mean, part of me thinks, yes, I would love to have somehow managed to incorporate it because it would be so tricksy. But yeah, in terms of the title itself, I think that it kind of spoke to my own frustration with myself. Like, when I was trying to write novels, I keep on saying this. Imagine you're trying to write a novel, and then your character dies, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And then you're like, for fuck's sake, everyone keeps on fucking dying. So it's just like kind of more like that. So I've taken out the expletives and kept it at a simple, everyone dies. Like a nice edit there.
So the title's basically a conversation you're having with yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
But I do think, like I'd been calling it that in my head, but I do think it works.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yes, but this is not a book. This is not a book about death. It is a book about life, and it's a book about the struggles of life. Is what I would say. I mean, the other thing that about Everyone Dies, about the title, that sort of it brought to mind for me is that it brings to mind the sort of cliches around we're all going to die, which you take in two directions. And the one is you go, we're all going to die, therefore everything's futile, therefore there's an absence of meaning. And the other is, we're all going to die, it can happen at any point. The seize the day, carpe diem bullshit. And I think that, and I think your book actually encapsulates both of those. It encapsulates that sense of futility, a sense of the difficulty of living in this world right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the importance of living in this world.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the stuff that comes out, it has a lot to do with, I don't know, struggles to stay connected in the world, the resilience you need to keep on living, the stuff that you've got to live through. If you're going to live through it, how do you do it? What does that look like?
Last question from me, and then I'm going to open it up, unless you're all absolutely quiet, and then, which I very much doubt. I saw a quote the other day, which made me think of you, but not about your relationship with your publisher at all. It's a quote from somebody called Natasha Pulley, and she said, "You think you're a normal, well-balanced person, but then your copy edit comes along. You find someone's messing with your hyphens and they don't understand ironic capital letters, and it turns out you're a howling demon person who wants to start Armageddon." Do you relate to that at all?
Well, I do think that I've heard horror stories, or I don't know, the real work that people have had to go through in terms of editing. And I think that I've had a very easy ride there. You helped enormously, and Karina was amazing. For the most part, it felt like Karina had a bag of commas that she wasn't sure what to do with, and was like, Frankie, we're going to have to put some more commas in because I've got this surplus, and who knows what will happen to the world if we have a surplus of commas. I mean, at one point,
ever looking, sorry to interrupt, but if anybody's ever looking, you have a desperate need in your life for somebody to talk to you for 45 minutes about bloody commas, this is the one, okay?
or lanyards, actually. I'm up for that conversation as well. That can
Too
go on for
soon,
longer.
lanyards is painful.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember, just in terms of the commas with Karina, that sounds like a children's book. Commas with Karina. That would be awesome. Anyway, there was one where she's like, okay, I think that we should take this one away. And I was like, okay, I'm for that. We can take it away. And then she's like, the one that I took away, I'm going to put back over here. And I was like, I saw what you did there.
And then there was the semicolon.
There was one semicolon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
gone.
like, no, I think that we kept one. There were two, and we kept one, and the other one. Yeah, I mean, like the editing process, the fact that I can make this kind of give this kind of answer, I think should tell everyone how easily, I guess how nicely Karina treated me and how much Mervyn supported.
Yeah, I did very little. I do love me a good semicolon, but I think, from my side, I mean, I think my role was absolutely minimal. Frankie's completely overstating it. I was a sounding board more than anything, and I think that Karina did a wonderful job, which was an incredibly light edit, and that was because this book did not need much editing. It was beautifully written and beautifully constructed, and shush. Right, questions from the floor. Mike, I can carry on. Yeah, Helen, Mike. Oh, it's Belinda.
We must have a long conversation about commas. I am an editor, and I repunctuate every manuscript my authors send me. But that actually leads into my question. Seriously, I'm not joking. I want to send writers and authors to you. Would you be available for that? Because my single biggest criticism as an editor is this needs cutting. And it's so hard to impose that on somebody's manuscript. And the biggest win is if you can train a would-be writer or an author or even an experienced published author to do that for themselves. So seriously, I want to send people to you, and I'm pricking up my ears when I hear that you work with other authors.
Most of the writers who I've worked with are people who are at the very start of any kind of writing identity. Some of them may not even become writers. They're people who have a need, a very real need to write down a particular part or even an entire story. Irrespective of what kind of writing they're doing or what kind of writer they aim to become, all I'm trying to do is give them the schools and the pleasure, the knowledge that if they want to do this again, they can, that they can enjoy that entire process. But at no point am I saying to them at that, like in that space, cut your work. This could do with an edit. You know what would make this better? Less of it. You know, I'm not that kind of. And I think in terms of writers who are established, I mean, I don't know that I can teach someone to be as cruel to themselves that I should be teaching that. Like, are you mean enough to yourself? You know, I don't know that I'd be comfortable doing that.
No, what you really need to do is not send them to Frankie, but send them to me to buy Frankie's book, because that does all sorts of really, really good things, okay? Just hang on one sec, let's just get the mic.
I just wondered whether Karina had some response to some of what you've said. I mean, anything. I just was curious. It seems like a, yeah, I mean.
I just want to say thank you, Frankie. It was an absolute honor to work with you, and to listen to you today is an unbelievable privilege. So I think thank you for allowing us to be part of this, to share this experience with you. And the only comment as a publisher, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I want to see all the rest. Where is it? Like, please send the rest.
Expecting to see a new contract sometime soon.
When you first wrote the work, did you find that you saw it differently later on? In other words, a writer can sometimes get emotionally attached to what they've written, and then you've got to find some distance to release that, and then look at it again. And how do you find how did it change over time for yourself and then for other readers as well?
I think that when I'm actually writing something, so much of it goes on in my head before I put it down into any kind of form, that it's not like it's already changed. It's constantly in flux. And as I continue it, I'm kind of editing as I go along. So it's constantly changing. Not necessarily the thing I'm trying to say or get across, but how it's being said. Constantly trying to find a better way of saying it. After I've left it alone for a while, and it's like done whatever it does, and my brain has moved to a different place, when I come back to it, often I'll be, that's when the destruction happens, where it's like, well, this is useless, and I'll toss it. Or it'll be like, well, if I cut 90% of this away, it'll be much stronger. So when I return, I'm a more impatient version of myself. That's what happens, yeah.
Frankie, first of all, congratulations. I'm absolutely delighted. And also, just this conversation is such a delight, because it's just like the turn of phrase. I love a bag of commas and a collection of smiles. I'm like, are those the next books, Frankie? Can we tease you about that? But the question I have is about, so you're speaking about how incredibly hard you are on yourself, and brutal almost. And so I'm wondering, as someone who brings so much joy to other readers, tell us something about, please tell me there was some joy in after you've done the slash and burn, or in the middle, or something. Can you tell us, was there any joy, any pleasure, any fun, any chuckling, any?
Oh, I love writing.
Detail.
I love it, love it, love it. I mean, like, to me, the like walking and having words playing in my head, holding a word in my mouth, feeling it like as I swallow. I mean, language to me it's a very physical thing. It's like being able to buy a piece of paper, have the right pen, and the physical act of writing. I love the like getting sentences and seeing how they swim together. Brings me such joy. You know, like I mean, I need to do the writing so that I can be in the world, and so that I'm like kind of healthy and like I understand stuff. It helps me to understand stuff. But it's not like as I'm writing these terrible pieces or like the depressing stuff that I'm like weeping, like, oh my God, my life's so hard. And when I'm doing the slashing and burning, I'm not thinking, oh, well, I'm a terrible person and this is disgusting. It's more like, this will make it better. Yes, the world will be better while I get rid of this. You know, so even that brings with it some joy. I'm getting rid of the garbage.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to jump in and just add something there, because I think that we've spoken, about the fact that there's a lot of trauma in this book. There's a tremendous playfulness, and I think it's one of the strengths of the book that Frankie has managed to do something which is very, very difficult, and that is hold those two things. And I think that, Pumla, when you read it, and I know you're going to read it very, very soon, I think that part of the joy comes through in that playfulness as well. There was a question, Mel had a question.
Take-A-Lot's actually trying to phone me, which is an awfully bad time for them to say they're dropping a parcel at my house, but anyway, let's forget about Take-A-Lot. So I want to ask you something. Firstly, congratulations, because it's epic. To actually allow a book to be published, because it does sound like you might be one of the most reluctant authors that ever existed. But I want to ask you something. I work with a lot of writers who when they start doing what you're describing, I call it the killing voice. And I try and teach them how to start getting gentler and to realize that voice is a liar often. And I want to ask you, do you think you are the very best judge to slash and burn? And do you ever allow other people to perhaps say to you, hey, this was really good. Why did you kill it?
I mean, people are welcome to say that to me. I mean, the fact is that it's my work. If I don't think it's good enough, it's not good enough. Do I care if I'm objective enough? Should I care? Because at the end of the day, they're my words. I've got no interest in pleasing someone else who thinks that I should be happy with what I'm not happy with. Why should I change what I think I should be happy with? Yeah. I'm definitely not objective. But I don't think I should be.
Hi, Frankie. Congratulations. I just want to know if you got some secret joy from killing people. Just be like, yeah, you die.
I think that if I had gotten to write some of the novels that I actually wanted to, I mean, there was some that were like, we spoke about the space opera one, and I mean, there were. I mean, I wanted to write something like along the lines of like Neil Asher or Neil Stevenson. You're like spec fic, but like mind-blowing. And yes, a lot of those come with a lot of death, but very different kinds of death. But this is what we've ended up with.
Got a question here.
Thank you. Congratulations, Frankie. And with all this slashing, have you ever brought back a character or plot line that you slashed back to life?
It's a little bit tricky for me to do it because often there was only the one copy or something. So, once it's gone, it's gone. But as I say, I do have like depositories with different people. So if I do remember something and I'm like, oh, or I start getting a kind of longing in myself for, like I wish I had a Control-Alt-Delete kind of thing, then Control-Alt-Z, then I can ask someone to, listen, do you still have the writing? Can you send it back to me? And then often I'll go through that and I'll be like, okay, I can rescue this one sentence. So there are occasions when that does happen. Not often, though.
Thank you. Well done, Frankie. Gosh, what a thing, hey? But you've been kicking and screaming. You've come to this finally to put together a book. Has it pressed the release button? I mean, it sounds like you've got a slew of novels sitting, waiting there. Because it's hard to write one book, it's even harder to write a second book. Do you feel now sort of liberated to do more?
I wanted to see how the whole of this process felt before I made a decision about whether to even consider doing something like this again. This whole thing feels like so unexpected. Knowing myself, it's like, how did this happen? I don't understand. I am now up on stage having, the only reason that I ended up working at Open Book was because Mervyn promised that I would never have to get up on stage. And then somehow I'm here, and I mean, anyone who's been anywhere near me in the last, well, all of you, obviously, know that I was dreading this. So the whole thing is a big surprise. So I need to see how the whole thing works, and then I can have a look at what is there, and then have a think about whether anything is good enough to give to Karina.
Hi, Frankie. Congratulations. I wanted to ask you maybe a complicated question. When you're writing, you obviously write for yourself, first of all, but is there at some level something you want to say to the world? Is that also part of it?
I don't think it's so much stuff that I want to say to the world. It's more, I think, a thing of stuff that's been in my head, that I'm trying to figure out what that means, or I'm trying to figure out like how one deals with something like that, or so it's stuff that's relevant to me, and I think that because I'm a human living in this world, what's relevant to me can often be relevant to other people as well. So it's not like I've set myself, okay, my task list for today is to write these things for the world to consume. I think it would be a good thing if everyone learned these things. It's very much me trying to figure stuff out that is like kicking around in my head.
There was a question from Sue right at the back there.
Hi, Frankie. Congratulations. So I was curious because I just got the book now and I was leafing through it and just seeing, and I noticed that on the first page your name is there, but it's kind of like stylized as like a little handwriting type thing, and I was wondering if that was deliberate so you wouldn't have to sign books after this.
Oh, I have actually pointed that out to a few people. It's already signed. It was a little bit because when we were looking at fonts, the fonts that the cover designer was showing me didn't agree with me, and then she showed me like handwriting things, and I was like, I quite like the idea of a handwriting thing, but I didn't think that it should be someone else's handwriting. That would be really weird. And so I ended up writing it myself, but then I asked her to please like fix the way I'd written, because it was like I couldn't get the letters to actually look the way I wanted them to, so I don't really like my own handwriting right now. So she cleaned up the Y of Murray, and she cleaned up the M, and I think she shifted an E closer to the M, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was because it felt like the right thing out of the options that we saw.
Okay, we are. Sorry. So one last question. Is that what somebody is saying? No? Okay. Okay, I was hearing something weird. We are done. Frankie's going to, despite the fact that there is a version of her name in the book, which is not entirely written by her, but mostly, she will be happy to sign in the Homecoming Center. Seriously, I think I've made it perfectly clear. This is got nothing to do with any sort of bias or subjectivity or anything like that. I have got absolutely, I know, everybody who reads this is going to be absolutely blown away by it. It is absolutely fucking exquisite. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mervyn, and thank you, everyone.